Medica is a monk in training who has never felt the touch of a woman before. However, his life changes when the school's hottest baddie takes an interest in him, forcing him to rethink his celibacy vows, thanks to her highly distracting attributes. Since the very beginning, Mona has been known as a beautiful and charming girl who everyone likes. Now that she's grown up, she's even more stunning, and wherever she goes, people can't help but stare. At school, Mona is the ultimate popular chick, and everyone and their freaky fathers know her. But then there's this new guy in her class, Medica, and for some reason, he just doesn't seem interested in her at all. Mona tries greeting him and even gives him special attention, something she never does for anyone else, but Medica is different. It bothers Mona that he doesn't fall for her charm like everyone else does, and it makes her mad, believing that any man on Earth should fold when they have a baddie like her next to them. Just then, Mona notices Medica scrolling through his phone and realizes he likes cats, so she immediately tries acting cute like one to get his attention, offering to show him her cat as well. Everyone else loves it, but Medica coldly responds that he doesn't like seafood, and it feels like he completely ignores all the effort she put in, which makes everyone else mad at him for insulting their goddess. Meanwhile, Mona is furious as ever since she was little, she's always been showered with attention and praise, so being ignored like this actually hurts her. Still, Mona isn't the type to give up, so she starts planning new ways to get his attention. She tries showing off her charm more boldly by completely swaying her plots at him, but instead of being impressed, Medica just looks disappointed, which only pushes her further by falling in front of him to show off more. But when he gets even more disgusted by this 304, she gets even more frustrated. Eventually, she comes up with another plan and pretends to feel sick during class, then asks Medica to take her to the nurse's office. Everyone is shocked because Medica just got a rare chance to be alone with Mona, and once they're inside the nurse's office, Mona makes her move, trying to corner him and win him over with her cuteness. For a moment, she thinks it's actually working when he starts getting flustered, but when he pulls back his composure, she raises the stakes. She drags him to talk, but then they both lose their balance and fall onto the bed together, making things awkward really fast. Mona realizes she might have gone too far just trying to get his attention, seeing that he's completely pissed. While Medica tries to stay calm, it makes Mona even more upset, so she gets desperate and showcases the twin sweeties, practically begging him to fall for her. When that doesn't work, she starts a tantrum and almost slips off, but Medica catches her at the last second and pulls her close again. Both of them are blushing, yet instead of giving in, Medica pulls away and goes back to class. But before leaving, he tells her that she should use her charm on someone she actually likes, and that line hits hard, as for the first time, the charmer feels like she's the one being played. A few hours later, Mona returns to class and thanks Medica for helping her earlier, but then she notices him staring at her, almost like he's trying to mog her, and suddenly she gets nervous. She realizes that it feels different this time, like her heart is reacting in a way she doesn't understand. When she looks back at him, he quickly acts like nothing happened, which only makes her blush even more. That's when Mona realizes that she's starting to fall for him. From that day on, she promises herself that she's going to win Medica's heart, no matter what it takes. The next day, everything seems normal at first, where people greet Mona, and she responds with her usual charm. But when she runs into Medica, she tries talking to him and even teases him a little. Yet he still reacts coldly, making her wonder what exactly she's doing wrong. Later during PE class, the guys can't stop staring at Mona while she stretches, secretly hoping they can also stretch her good. She then tries inviting Medica to join her, teasing him a little again, but the Chad is completely unfazed. The guys around them get annoyed at him for it, while Mona is seriously starting to struggle, feeling like she has tried everything. She doesn't even care how far she has to go anymore because her only goal now is winning him over. So after PE, Mona tries using her hot and sweaty look to get his attention, even showcasing her holy belly button, but Medica still ignores her like some kind of saint. That breaks her mentally, as for the first time in her life, she's dealing with someone who just won't fall for her charm. Later on, Mona follows him to the sink area where he's washing up. She joins him, and while she's drinking water from the sink, Medica suddenly blushes, and Mona catches it immediately. She gets excited, thinking she's finally breaking through, but then things suddenly take a turn when she accidentally gets herself wet, making the plot get even thicker between them. Mona crouches down in embarrassment, but to her surprise, Medica quickly gives her his shirt to help her out, and this time it's Mona who gets flustered from seeing his holy belly button. She thanks him, and he walks away, but unbeknownst to them, another girl witnesses the whole situation. After school, Medica starts panicking as he realizes the shirt he lent Mona smells like his cheesy sweat, though he quickly tries calming himself down. Suddenly, some classmates confront him about everything Mona has been doing to get closer to him and how cruel he is to her. They're curious and honestly a little jealous too, but Medica doesn't really care. Instead, he brings them to a park and finally explains the truth that he's actually the heir to a cat temple, and because of his beliefs, he isn't allowed to get close to girls, and he doesn't know how to talk to them. However, deep down though, Medica admits that a girl like Mona is rare to him, as he only sees girls of her caliber on television, and part of him really does want something more. But every time those thoughts appear, he forces himself to clear his mind, which is slowly driving him nuts, and honestly freaks the other guys out seeing it. He reminds himself that he came to Tokyo hoping to live a normal school life, but instead, he ended up meeting a girl like Mona, someone who's completely completely turning his world upside down. The next day, Mona returns his shirt to him and teases him, asking if he prefers her scent on it. And when she sees him pulling back his composure, she gets even more motivated to make him fall for her. The next day, Medica and Mona end up paired together in art class, where she becomes his model, sitting there, posing while hoping to be Medica's French girl. And while everyone is loving her cutesy demeanor, Mona is struggling to get in Medica's head, despite teasing him to draw her curves. Inside, she's still thinking about how to win Medica over, and for some reason, she feels like today might finally be the day. She remembers how Medica reacted when she drank water before, and how he got a little flustered. Because of that, Mona starts posing in ways that show off her charm even more, and Medica starts blushing and gets super shy, but instead of falling for her, he does the exact opposite. He tries even harder to lock in and clear his mind, and the more Mona pushes, the more he pulls away, which is seriously frustrating her. While posing there, she notices another girl staring at them, though she brushes it off because Medica is staring at her too. But then she realizes that he's not looking at her the way everyone else does, and he's focusing on drawing her neck. That tiny detail hits her way harder than expected. Suddenly her face heats up, her heart starts racing, and Mona can't believe what's happening. She's actually getting butterflies seeing him gaze a hole through her, and for the first time in her life it feels like she might really be falling in love. So instead of staying there, Mona suddenly runs off to the bathroom, pretending she feels sick, and she tries calming herself down, but she can't stop thinking about the way Medica looked at her. It made her heart flutter, and she kind of liked it. Back in class, Medica finishes Mona's portrait, and the guys are impressed with how detailed and beautiful he drew her. But he immediately clears his mind again, reminding himself that admiring someone like that goes against his beliefs. Later on, Medica accidentally runs into Mona at the library, and they both reach for the same book at the same time, where their hands touch. For a moment, everything feels completely still, but instead of turning it into a real moment, Medica quickly lets her have the book and walks away.
Come on, man.
Mona instantly sees this as another chance to get closer to him, so she ends up reading the book with him anyway. However, she notices the girl who stared at her earlier, Subomi, staring at her again and wonders why she wants. There, Mona realizes quickly that she was gazing at Medica's hot face and that she has feelings for him. That realization sparks jealousy in Mona almost immediately, and she starts thinking that maybe Medica's type is someone like Subomi, someone quieter and more modest, and that thought pushes her even harder. She decides she's going all out now with no holding back. Suddenly, Mona switches things up completely by putting on glasses and acting like a shy, nerdy girl just to see how Medica reacts. And Medica gets flustered again. Mona teases him, feeling like she's finally making progress, but just as quickly, Medica snaps back to reality. He gets serious and walks away, leaving Mona completely shocked. She genuinely has no idea what to do anymore, and to make things even worse, she notices Subomi looking satisfied, almost like she's happy that Mona's crusty face got rejected, which hurts Mona. Over the next few days, Mona starts observing Subomi more closely and realizes that while Subomi is simple and plain, she also has bigger weapons than her, and carries herself more modestly, which scares Mona, thinking that she might actually lose to someone else. Just then, one of her simps, shows up to hand her a book, and Mona thanks him in a cute voice, and suddenly something clicks in her head. That cute voice could become her weapon, so she immediately heads to the rooftop where Medica is resting. She lets her handkerchief accidentally fly away, hoping he'll catch it, and when he does, Mona thanks him in that same cute voice and starts teasing him again, trying to push things further. But when she tries saying something more serious, she freezes completely, not being able to say the word love. Right at that moment, a strong gust of wind blows by and almost lifts her skirt.
Oh my God!
Totally embarrassed, Mona panics and runs away, not just because of almost showcasing her roast beef, but because she realizes that she might not actually be ready for Medica yet. A few days later, the class starts choosing committees for the upcoming festival. Mona is still frustrated because months have already passed and she still hasn't managed to win Medica over. Then, Mona gets selected for the committee and ends up paired with Subomi, and the two of them sit down to discuss the festival. And to her surprise, things go pretty smoothly at first. While they talk, Mona tries figuring out how Subomi feels about Medica. She even shares a story about her last festival, and Subomi listens with genuine excitement. Suddenly, Mona accidentally breaks her pen, and Subomi quickly lends her another one, but when Mona tries returning it, Subomi suddenly panics. She starts nervously explaining that there's nothing important on her phone and that she actually wanted Mona to be the last person to ever see what's inside it. That only makes Mona even more curious, so she starts chasing Subomi around the classroom, demanding to see the phone. And in the middle of it all, she even blurts out that Medica is the only one for her. Eventually, Mona manages to get the phone, and what she sees completely surprises her, as the phone is filled with pictures of her. There, Subomi shyly admits that she's been a fan of Mona ever since they first met, and was simply too embarrassed to ever say it out loud. Mona is stunned, but instead of getting mad, she smiles and hugs Subomi immediately, forgiving her on the spot, even with hundreds of photos on the phone that would put her on the FBI watch list. After that, Mona casually tries covering herself by claiming that the Medica she mentioned earlier was actually just a fish. But Subomi already knows Mona has feelings for Medica. Subomi starts teasing her about everything, from the moment in the nurse's office to all the little moments they've shared, and Mona gets completely embarrassed, unable to deny any of it. But in the end, Subomi promises that she'll support her instead. The next day, Mona's class is busy preparing for the upcoming school festival, and as a committee member, she takes everything seriously and focuses on getting the work done properly. Because of that, she ends up spending more time with Subomi, which honestly feels a little strange to her. Then Subomi shows up with some good news, but she also notices Mona staring at Medica again. Seeing that, Subomi encourages her to just go for it and have his offsprings already, and that instantly makes Mona flustered. She quickly denies it, annoyed that Subomi completely misunderstood her. In Mona's mind, she isn't supposed to be the one falling for someone, and that's how it's always been, but she now starts worrying that maybe she's losing her charm. Later on, Mona and Subomi start trying on different outfits for the festival, and while they're doing that, Subomi suddenly brings up a school legend called the Bridge of Love. According to the story, if a boy and a girl hold hands while crossing that bridge, they'll fall in love forever. The moment Mona hears that, her brain immediately starts planning, knowing that she needs to make a move before Medica ends up with someone else. So she begins trying on different outfits that might catch his attention, and she eventually settles on a bunny outfit, but because it makes her look like a Playboy bunny, she's not comfortable wearing it. Suddenly, Medica accidentally walks into the room, and Mona freezes in shock after realizing he just saw her wearing that outfit. While Medica, who only came in to deliver some papers, wonders what's even going on. Just then, Mona hears Subomi getting closer, and without thinking, she grabs Medica and drags him into a closet to avoid causing a misunderstanding. Now the two of them are stuck inside together, and with the space being cramped, Mona can feel just how close their bodies are, almost like they're glued together. Then she realizes her juicy melons are pressed against him, and her face instantly turns bright red. Feeling the sweet puppies, Medica starts praying, and with his voice right next to her ear, it tickles enough to make Mona struggle to stay quiet. Eventually, Subomi leaves the room, and the two of them can finally breathe again. Mona assumes Medica must be panicking too, but instead, he just calmly exhales like nothing even happened, which only frustrates her more. Mona starts worrying that the outfit might have made him dislike her, but then, completely out of nowhere, Medica calls her cute, and just like that, she's left completely speechless. Medica quickly walks away afterward, embarrassed by what he just admitted, knowing that those feelings go against his beliefs, but he can't deny the truth anymore with his heart racing. The next morning, Mona walks into school, fully convinced that Medica has finally fallen for her, so she greets him with her usual charm. But instead of reacting, Medica simply gives her a cold look, leaving Mona completely stunned, especially after the special moment they shared. A few days later, the school festival finally begins, and Mona's class becomes a huge success with their bunny cafe, especially with Mona being the main host. During a break, she decides to visit Medica in the kitchen and asks him to have lunch with her, but he refuses and keeps eating the orders instead. Mona quickly realizes that Medica is embarrassed about calling her cute earlier, and now she wants to use that against him. But Medica's self-control is stronger than Gojo's domain expansion, and no matter what she tries, he keeps resisting her charm. Then Subomi suddenly steps in and orders Medica to go outside and help advertise with Mona. He's completely caught off guard while Mona is secretly thrilled because this is exactly the chance she wanted. Right after, the two of them are walking around the school together in bunny outfits while promoting their class. As they pass different themed rooms, Mona slowly starts relaxing, until Medica suddenly decides to enter a haunted house. Mona hates scary stuff, making it the last place she wants to go, but because Medica wants to enter, she forces herself to follow him while pretending to be brave. The second she steps inside, she screams after seeing a fake ghost, and to make things worse, her skirt gets caught on one of the props, forcing her to rely on Medica for help. Meanwhile, Medica is enjoying himself, as haunted things remind him of home, so he feels perfectly fine the entire time. Then, he suddenly feels Mona tugging on him from behind, and the moment he turns around, he realizes her skirt has lifted. Both of them instantly freeze, and they quickly fix the situation before rushing out of the haunted house together. After that disaster, Mona decides she's done following Medica's lead and starts dragging him around the festival herself instead. But somehow, everything keeps going wrong, and nothing works out the way she imagined. Her original goal was to make Medica's heart race, yet every attempt completely backfires on her instead. At this point, she honestly has no idea what to do anymore, but suddenly she notices that they ended up at the Bridge of Love, the same place Subomi told her about earlier. Mona starts remembering the legend of the Bridge of Love that Subomi told her about earlier. As she looks around, she notices people whispering and wondering if she and Medica are actually dating. That immediately worries her because if rumors start spreading, things could get chaotic really fast. Luckily, Mona quickly comes up with a plan by promoting her class to all the couples hanging around the bridge instead. Some of the guys immediately feel relieved after hearing that Mona and Medica aren't dating, and a bunch of them head straight to her class afterward. With the crowd around the bridge slowly thinning out, Mona then tells Medica about the Bridge of Love, and suddenly suddenly pretends to trip and fall, acting like she needs help getting back up, with the whole thing just to make Medica hold her hand. But instead, Medica completely catches her off guard by lifting her without even touching her hands, and Mona is left absolutely speechless that he touched her sensitive armpits. As the festival starts winding down, Mona realizes she's running out of time, and she still believes that she has one final chance left. But suddenly, their classmates rush over and tell them they need help back in the classroom because it's become ridiculously crowded. And just like that, the festival comes to an end, and Mona fails to make Medica fall for her again. Subomi notices immediately that things didn't go the way Mona wanted, so she steps in and straight up orders Medica to help Mona move the desks. Everyone is shocked seeing Subomi act this assertively, but what they don't realize is that she's secretly trying to help Mona get closer to him. Medica immediately starts helping Mona move the desks around, but by this point, Mona is completely drained. She can't even force herself to smile anymore, and that worries Medica a little. The silence between them starts getting awkward, and Mona can't stand it anymore, so she tries starting a conversation about the festival. But Medica doesn't respond at all, which only frustrates her even more. Then suddenly, Mona accidentally bumps into a stack of boxes and nearly gets crushed. But Medica stops the boxes before grabbing her hands to protect her. It's only a light touch, but Mona suddenly realizes that they are on the bridge of love. However, she feels like the spell shouldn't count anymore since the festival is already over. And the two of them agree with that idea, but deep down, both of them are still flustered about the whole thing. Trying to break the awkward tension, Medica finally speaks up and admits that he actually had a lot of fun during the festival thanks to her, stating that it's his first time enjoying something like that, which instantly makes Mona smile. The next day, Mona walks to school together with Subomi, and Subomi is curious about what happened between her and Medica during the festival. But before Mona can even answer, Medica and his friends walk past them, causing Mona to instantly hide out of embarrassment. She's still flustered over everything that happened, but she quickly pulls herself together and pretends that nothing happened at all. On the way to class, Sho invites Mona and Subomi to go bowling after school, and the moment Mona hears that Medica will be there, she immediately realizes this means more chances to make him fall for her, so she agrees without hesitation. Later at the bowling alley, the group starts playing together. Mona manages to score a few points and starts going around giving everyone high fives except for Medica, who's still acting awkward around her. So Mona directly asks him for one instead, but the moment he raises his hand, Mona instantly remembers the bridge of love moment again and runs away in panic, without realizing Medica is just as flustered as she is. Medica tries forcing himself to refocus by reminding himself about his temple training, doing everything he can to stay locked in, but Mona suddenly appears beside him and sits down. She notices him drinking something, so she casually grabs the drink and takes a sip herself, fully aware that it counts as an indirect kiss. While everyone else stays focused on bowling, Mona keeps drinking from his cup, and both of them start blushing like crazy. Mona becomes completely convinced that Medica has definitely fallen for her now, but to her surprise, Medica still acts cold. He then simply hands her the whole drink and quickly walks off to bowl, trying to hide how flustered he really is, which only leads to him throwing a shot worse than your daddy's pull-out game. A few days later, Mona arrives at school wearing her winter uniform, and it immediately grabs everyone's attention. Mona even tries teasing Medica about it, but he doesn't react at all, and seeing that nothing has changed, she quietly returns to her seat, feeling completely down. Subomi and the others notice her mood right away and decide they need to step in. Meanwhile, Medica gets called out by Sho and Yuzuru, who are annoyed and don't like how cold Medica keeps acting, especially when Mona has been trying so hard this entire time. He points out how upset she keeps getting because Medica refuses to respond to her feelings. But then Yuzuru steps in with a calmer approach, and he gives Medica a bit of advice, explaining that even if he wants to stay focused on his temple duties, that doesn't mean he has to treat people so coldly. Those words actually stick with Medica, and later, while heading back to class, Medica gets confronted by Subomi in the hallway. She openly calls him out for the way he's been treating Mona, and even raises her voice enough to attract attention from the people around them, which makes Medica rethink everything. So later on, when Medica notices that Mona forgot her textbook, he offers to share his with her, which completely surprises Mona because this is the first time he's ever made a move like this on his own. She quickly sits next to him, but Medica immediately starts panicking and almost goes back to acting cold again. Then he notices Sho and Subomi watching him from nearby, silently pressuring him to do better. So for once, Medica pushes through his awkwardness and properly sits beside Mona while sharing the textbook with her. For the first time in a while, Mona finally sees Medica genuinely being nice to her again, and it makes her smile for real. Seeing that smile instantly flusters Medica, but he reminds himself that no matter what happens, he just can't fall for her. A few days later, Mona wakes up expecting the usual warm sunlight shining through her window. But when she opens her eyes, she is greeted by the sound of rain instead. The gloomy weather instantly puts her in a bad mood. But when she walks to school, she notices that something slowly starts to change. She sees the reflections on the street, the quiet atmosphere, and the sound of the rain falling around her feel beautiful. It reminds her of Medica, and just thinking about him lifts her mood a little. Suddenly, she runs into him on the street, and Mona finds out that Medica gave his umbrella away to a family of cats. Hearing that almost makes her blush, as it's such a kind thing to do, but she immediately snaps herself back to reality because of her mission to make Medica fall for her. Realizing this is the perfect opportunity, Mona immediately tries to convince him to share an umbrella with her. At first, Medica refuses, but then he remembers what everyone told him about being nicer to Mona, so he ends up agreeing. As they walk together under the umbrella, Mona is secretly thrilled. She starts noticing that Medica seems to have a clear line he refuses to cross, and that makes her curious about how far she can push him. She slowly leans closer to test his reaction, but Medica doesn't seem to mind at all. However, the second she tries the almighty hand-holding, Medica suddenly moves away and chooses to walk in the rain instead. He then almost kisses a pole, and Mona sees where he draws the line, so she invites him in the umbrella, and the two still make it to school safely. While walking through the gym area, Mona notices a girl completely dominating a basketball game like she's 91 Michael Jordan. And that girl is Asashi. Her cool and confident presence immediately catches both Mona and Medica's attention, but then Mona accidentally drops her umbrella, drawing Asashi's focus to Medica and makes her slip. The basketball comes flying straight toward Mona, but Medica reacts instantly and stops it just in time. Mona quickly apologizes to Asashi for interrupting the game, yet instead of accepting it, Asashi responds coldly and tells this narcissistic bum not to disrupt her play. Mona immediately senses the tension and tries walking away, but Asashi suddenly grabs her and pulls her aside. She immediately starts questioning Mona about her relationship with Medica, asking whether she's his girlfriend, and Mona explains that they aren't dating and that she was only helping him in the rain, but Asashi doesn't believe her. She keeps pushing for a real answer, but before things can spiral further, Asashi's friends drag her away, knowing it could easily turn into a bigger problem. Later, Mona asks Medica about Asashi and finds out he doesn't even know who she is. That actually relieves her a little, but once he leaves, Mona starts putting everything together and realizes that Asashi has feelings for him, which means that Mona officially has competition and she needs to step up her game. Later, Mona gathers more information about Asashi, and she learns that Asashi is popular, smart, and admired by tons of people. Her friends even compare the two girls directly, calling Asashi the cool famous girl, while Mona is known as the cute famous girl. Then suddenly, Mona gets a visitor, and to her surprise, it's Asashi. She wants to continue their earlier conversation about Medica, but before Mona can even respond, she notices that Asashi is red like a tomato. That's when Mona realizes Medica is standing right behind her, and Asashi tries speaking, but the second Medica casually calls her the cool basketball girl. Her legs practically turn into jelly. She gets so flustered that she completely embarrasses herself and immediately runs away. But before leaving, she turns back around and openly declares war on Mona, saying she refuses to lose when it comes to winning Medica, shocking Mona. The next day, Mona arrives at school already thinking about Asashi, and she feels irritated that Asashi is the first person to declare war to her, and it's all because of Medica. Then she notices Asashi standing outside the classroom, almost like she's waiting for someone. Asashi clearly wants to say something, but the moment Medica shows up, she freezes and blushes again. Mona instantly steps in, greeting both of them while taking control of the situation, refusing to let Asashi get closer to Medica that easily. Right then, the bell rings, and Medica casually tells Asashi to head back to class, and she obeys immediately, almost like she has fully submitted to him. Back inside class, Medica suddenly remembers Asashi's full name, which immediately makes Mona uneasy, realizing that Asashi has entered Medica's mind. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Asashi talks with her friend Minami, who encourages Asashi to just confess her feelings already since Medica is single anyway. While they're talking, they notice a group of simps freaking out over some creamy pictures of baddies, and Asashi is disgusted by it, while Minami simply laughs and says it's completely normal. Later during PE class, Mona's class ends up playing basketball. Wanting to prove she's more than just a cute girl, Mona goes all out and completely dominates the game, catching everyone's attention. Meanwhile, Medica is absolutely terrible at basketball, which ends with him getting assigned to clean the gym afterward. He thinks he's alone, but then Mona suddenly appears and offers to help him improve, starting by guiding him on how to shoot like Prime Curry. When she notices how awkward his form is, she deliberately moves closer to correct him. Medica completely panics internally and desperately tries staying calm, but Mona keeps pushing his limits further and further. Just when she's about to take things even farther, Asashi suddenly appears, and when she sees what's happening, Asashi immediately calls Mona out for having feelings for Medica. Mona shuts that down instantly, but out of jealousy, Asashi insists on joining them anyway. She starts training Medica too, starting with his core, and she demonstrates a plank while deliberately showcasing her Betty Blues. Mona quickly realizes exactly what Asashi is trying to do, and jumps in herself, escalating the situation even more. The two girls start a battle between bigger is better versus smaller is sweeter, and Medica becomes so overwhelmed that he literally runs away from both of them. In the end, both Mona and Asashi are left completely embarrassed, realizing they probably pushed things way too far. The next day, Mona and the others notice that Medica isn't at school and finds out that he's sick. Mona immediately starts overthinking whether it was her fault or Asashi's for raising his blood pressure, and she can't stop worrying about it. After school, the guys decide to visit Medica at his house, and Mona thinks it's a great idea. But what nobody realizes is that Asashi has been listening the whole time. She quickly runs to Minami and tells her everything, even blaming herself for Medica getting sick. But instead of getting worried, Minami sees this as the perfect opportunity and tells Asashi to visit him too, because seeing Medica in his sick mode might actually make him fall for her. Later on, the guys arrive at Medica's house, and they are completely unaware that Mona has secretly followed them there. Standing outside, Mona grins to herself, thinking that being alone with Medica could finally become her winning move. Suddenly, Asashi pops up, and she immediately calls Mona out for acting like a creep, but Mona defends herself by claiming she's only worried about Medica. Asashi isn't fooled at all because she's literally doing the same thing, and Mona can tell Asashi is completely serious, and for a moment, she honestly feels like she could lose this battle. Meanwhile, the guys leave so Medica can rest, but just as he closes the door and thinks he's finally alone, Mona and Asashi suddenly appear in front of him, both insisting that they should take care of him. Medica gets completely flustered, and he tries sending them away, but Mona pushes her way inside anyway, determined to stay, and Asashi follows right behind her. As soon as they enter, both girls are surprised by how simple Medica's place looks, while Medica is internally panicking because this is the first time girls have ever entered his room. The girls start cooking for him, and Mona ends up teaching Asashi how to cook, which frustrates her. After that, Mona tries feeding Medica, but he refuses and insists on eating by himself instead. Asashi watches the whole thing with growing jealousy while secretly preparing for her next move, and Mona is doing the exact same thing. Then suddenly, Medica is hit with an overwhelming sight of Mona in a nurse's outfit and Asashi wearing a doctor's outfit. Mona instantly realizes what Asashi is trying to do, but she refuses to back down, so the two girls keep teasing and pushing him nonstop until it all becomes way too much for Medica to handle, and he literally passes out. At that point, both girls finally stop and let him rest, and Asashi quietly admits to herself that Mona is tougher competition than she expected. Then, Mona realizes that Asashi is here because she genuinely likes Medica, and Asashi even admits it directly. She says she wants to date him, kiss him, and make plenty of juniors with him, but just saying those words out loud embarrasses her so badly that she runs off to buy drinks, leaving Mona alone together with Medica. While walking outside, Asashi starts thinking back on how she used to never believe in love at first sight until she met Medica. That single moment changed everything for her, and even if some of her earlier actions were embarrassing, she knows this is her fight, and she has no intention of giving up. Back inside the house, Mona can't stop thinking about what Asashi said, and the whole idea of love confuses her. She doesn't fully understand it yet, but she can't stop wondering about it either. She quietly sits next to Medica while he sleeps, but suddenly he wakes up halfway and pulls her into a hug. Still half asleep, he mistakes her for a cat and starts calling her cute. Mona completely freezes on the spot and has absolutely no idea how to react. After a few moments, she gently puts him back down onto the bed. As she stares at him, her eyes slowly drift toward his lips, and she remembers what Asashi said earlier about wanting to kiss him, and without even realizing it, Mona slowly starts leaning closer. But at the last second, she stops herself, remembering that this isn't supposed to be her mission. Right then, Asashi comes back and immediately gets furious. She drags Mona outside and confronts her on the spot. Mona tries explaining herself, but Asashi refuses to believe her. Frustrated, Mona accidentally blurts out her real goal of trying to make Medica fall for her. The moment those words leave her mouth, she gets embarrassed, but Asashi suddenly realizes that Mona hasn't actually fallen for Medica the same way she has. Instead of exposing her, Asashi decides to keep it a secret. She says that makes them even, though she still openly declares that she has no intention of losing. The next day, both Mona and Asashi wait for Medica to return to school, and even while sitting in class, the tension between them is still obvious. Mona calls Asashi out for still chasing after him, and Asashi immediately fires back at her. Then the guys suddenly show up, and Asashi casually mentions that she visited Medica too. Everyone gets surprised and even says they wish they'd all run into each other there. Meanwhile, Subomi quietly listens from nearby, feeling a little jealous hearing how close everyone sounds, especially knowing that Mona and Asashi are competing over Medica. Finally, Medica walks into class looking much healthier, and he thanks everyone who came to visit him. Hearing that, Asashi gets so shy that she suddenly leaves the room, which leaves Mona alone with him. For a brief moment, she remembers what Asashi said about love, but she quickly forces those thoughts aside, needing to stay focused on her mission. Then suddenly, Medica actually tries starting a conversation with her. Mona immediately panics, having absolutely no idea how to respond, so instead she keeps avoiding him out of embarrassment. Every single time Medica tries talking to her, she runs away again and again until, eventually, she crashes straight into him. The impact leaves her so dizzy that she completely passes out, and when Mona finally wakes up, she realizes she's in the nurse's office and that Medica carried her there himself. He properly thanks her for visiting him while he was sick, and even though it's such a simple moment, it hits Mona harder than anything else so far. After Medica leaves, Mona can't stop thinking about what happened. From the way he carried her to how gentle he was, all of it keeps replaying in her mind, and for the very first time, it becomes completely clear to her that she's the one starting to fall for Medica. Sometime later in class, Sho puts a new wallpaper on Medica's phone, and when Medica sees what it is, he is in shock to see the amount of sauce on screen. While the boys think it's good for his hormones and health, Medica walks out and tells himself that he should delete it. Meanwhile, Subomi takes initiative and tells Mona that she just sent Medica a picture of Mona, seeing that Asahi is stepping up her game as Mona's love rival. While Mona initially thinks that it's a bad idea, she suddenly thinks that it could be beneficial to have a third party helping her out. But when she sees the picture Subomi picked out and sent to Medica, she changes her mind and urges Subomi to unsend the picture. But in that moment, Subomi's phone battery dies and Mona panics that Medica might see that picture, so she runs out to go look for him through the whole school before he sees it. Somewhere at school, Medica gets the picture from Subomi, but he doesn't want to open it in public, knowing his wallpaper is freaky, so he finds somewhere private. He goes to the rooftop to look at the picture, but passes the wallpaper and secretly looks at it instead. Suddenly, Mona pops up, making him slip, and she orders him not to look at the picture. Medica starts tweaking out of embarrassment, promising that he didn't see, and Mona takes this chance to delete the picture. But when she opens his phone, she is greeted by the spicy picture on his wallpaper. That shocks her, so she deleted the picture and coldly returned the phone before walking away, annoyed that he preferred those kinds of girls rather than a cute girl like her. Later in class, she starts wondering why Medica seems more interested in random pictures than in all the effort she puts into getting his attention. While being down about the whole thing, she learns the truth about how Sho was the one who forcefully set up Medica's wallpaper, despite Medica disagreeing with his action. She then hears about how Sho tells Medica that he should have a cute girl as his wallpaper, and seeing this chance, she sends Medica a selfie of herself, claiming that it was an accident, but she doesn't mind if he puts it as his wallpaper. While the others get jealous over this, Medica keeps his composure and casually deletes it, pretending it is no big deal. Watching this makes Mona even more frustrated, but then Subomi snaps her out of her thoughts by showing her a pumpkin and randomly asking if she can take pictures of Mona in a Halloween costume. The weird request suddenly gives Mona an idea of making a Halloween picture that will be Medica's wallpaper. So while holding up the pumpkin, Mona announces to the whole class that she will be hosting a Halloween party over the weekend. At the same time, she secretly starts thinking about what kind of costume would get Medala's attention the most. But unbeknownst to her, while Mona excitedly talks about her plans, Asahi quietly listens nearby. The next day, Medica and his friends wait for Mona and Subomi for the party. For a moment, Medica and the simps are completely distracted by all the girls around them, imagining Mona wearing their outfits, from the classiest to the hottest, until Subomi catches up and snaps them back to reality. Just then, Mona arrives, immediately drawing attention from everyone nearby with her drip. As usual, Subomi starts taking photos of Mona while Mona focuses on Medica, planning on finding out what costume he likes on her. But then, Asahi suddenly pops up, surprising Mona. But Yuzuru reveals that he was the one who invited her, as he thought that she and Mona are good friends from how they interact with each other. Then, Medica greets Asahi, instantly making her nervous, and Yuzuru suggests they should stop standing around and head to the mall already. At the mall, Mona tries on several costumes picked by Subomi, but quickly realizes that she's wasting time. So she tells Subomi to focus on herself, and she goes to look for Medica. On her way, she walks past Asahi while she shops, and sees that she's struggling to pick something. From Asahi's facial reaction alone, Mona can guess that just like her, Asahi is also wondering what Medica would like. Just then, Minami suddenly appears beside Asahi, and she explains that she expected Asahi to struggle with costume choices, so she already planned several options ahead of time. Asahi gives up and lets Minami choose for her, and Minami excitedly starts picking increasingly bold costume ideas, much to Asahi's discomfort. However, after scrolling through more, she finally finds one that Asahi also approves of. Elsewhere, Mona secretly spies on Medica and his friends from behind a rack of costumes. The boys joke around while discussing the party and what kind of costume they prefer on a girl, while Mona is excited to hear what Medica has to say. But then, Medica hears Mona's presence, and he goes to check on it, but Mona manages to just hide under a horse mask, masterfully disguising herself from Medica's suspicion. Then, they return to the topic at hand, and Medica points at a costume that he likes for a girl to wear the most, and when Mona sees it, Mona feels victorious after learning this. Once the boys leave, Mona checks the costume rack herself, and when she sees the outfit Medica seemed interested in, she is shocked by his surprisingly bold taste, but chooses to push herself to wear it, all for Medica. Later, the whole group gathers together, and the girls take turns showing off their costumes. Subomi goes first and reveals a fairy outfit, earning cheerful reactions. Then, when it's Mona's turn, the moment she steps out, everyone is completely stunned seeing her wearing a spicy mummy costume. All the while, she fights back her embarrassment hard, but when she looks at Medica's reaction, she sees him disgusted and feels disappointed. It's then that Yuzuru points out that the costume Medica likes is the one next to the mummy costume, and Mona nearly starts tweaking from embarrassment. Outside the mall, while everyone continues chatting, Mona awkwardly tries to brush off the situation as if it were all intentional. But deep down, she silently promises herself that at the Halloween party, she is definitely going to make Medica notice her. On the day of the Halloween party, Mona is fired up about her costume and fully determined to replace the woman on Medica's lock screen with a photo of herself. After arriving at the venue, she heads to a random room with Subomi and Asashi so they can change, and Subomi immediately starts showering Mona with compliments, while Asashi Asashi quietly worries about the outfit Manami picked out for her. Trying to ignore her nerves, Asashi cuts through Subomi's endless praise and bluntly tells Mona she would have seriously regretted choosing the mummy costume, considering it makes her look cheap, and Mona awkwardly agrees, then changes into an outfit that supposedly Medica likes, a witch outfit. Then they change into their costumes, and Subomi suddenly reappears in a ghost costume and excitedly praises Mona all over again. Mona is baffled by Subomi's costume change and asks why she ditched the fairy outfit, and Subomi casually explains that she feels more comfortable hiding inside something that covers most of her face. Once everyone is dressed, the three girls head toward the main party, and just before reaching the main room, Mona realizes she forgot her witch hat and runs back to grab it. But in the process, she accidentally loosens the zipper on her costume. At the worst possible moment, Medica, who happens to be wearing the same ghost costume as Subomi, shows up and Mona mistakes him for Subomi, so Mona drags him into the girls' changing room and asks for help with her zipper. Medica immediately gets nervous over the idea of touching something so soft and immediately suspects that she's up to something strange again, but once he realizes she thinks he's Subomi, he decides it's easier to just go along with it. So Medica carefully fixes the zipper, but after hearing heavy breathing behind her, Mona turns around in concern. She casually opens the ghost costume to check on her friend and freezes the second she realizes there's a dude underneath. Medica hurriedly tries to explain, but Mona screams so loudly, realizing that it's her fault. Later, back at the party, Mona helps Subomi adjust her costume so she can tell her apart from Medica more easily. Watching Medica from afar, Mona tries to convince herself the whole zipper incident was meaningless and that she needs to focus on her original mission. She reminds herself to eventually send Medica a good photo of herself, though remembering how badly that went last time only makes her more irritated. Before she can dwell on it further, one of their classmates announces a party game where each pair has to wrap one partner in toilet paper like a mummy, and the most complete wrapping wins. The teams must be one boy and one girl, with the boy doing the wrapping, and to make it more appealing, the host promises the winners a commemorative photo. Hearing that, Mona instantly sees her chance to finally get a picture with Medica. Everyone begins drawing numbers to find a partner, and Mona notices Asashi standing close by, clearly hoping for the same outcome. In the chaos, Subomi accidentally tosses Medica's number into the air, leading Mona and Asashi to both grab it at once. Neither of them lets go, and Asashi tries persuading Mona to back off, but Mona refuses and tightens her grip. There, Mona realizes that Asashi isn't even using her full strength, so she thinks quickly and calls out to Medica, catching Asashi off guard just long enough for her to loosen her hold. Mona immediately claims victory and marches over to Medica, proudly announcing that they're teaming up. The game begins, and Subomi, already way too invested in Mona's love life, eagerly snaps pictures of Mona and Medica together. Mona starts off excited, but her enthusiasm quickly fades when she realizes Medica is rapping at a pace slower than a one-legged turtle. Looking around, she sees other teams making much faster progress and panics that they're about to lose. In response, she tries coaching Medica on a faster technique, only for him to become even more flustered and overwhelmed. Eventually, Medica's brain busts alongside his goon gun, and he collapses to the floor in defeat. The host calls time and announces Subomi and her partner as the winners. And while Subomi happily celebrates and takes her prize photo, Mona glares at Medica, clearly blaming him for their loss. Afterward, several girls line up to take selfies with Medica, instantly triggering Mona's jealousy. She tells herself Medica will probably just delete the photos later, but her patience eventually snaps, and she jumps into the crowd and tries to get a picture with him too, only for Medica to awkwardly pull away, which completely crushes her mood. Later, during a group photo, Mona can't stop wondering why Medica is fine taking pictures with everyone except her. Frustrated, she grabs part of his costume and scolds him for being so clueless before storming home. The next morning, Medica admits to his friends that he thinks Mona might be upset because she asked for a picture at the party and he turned her down. He explains that after talking to so many people, he just got overwhelmed, but his friends immediately call him out, even showing him a photo of Mona from the party as evidence of how much effort she put into looking good. Realizing he messed up, Medica agrees that he should apologize, but before he gets the chance, Mona suddenly appears and cheerfully greets everyone as if nothing happened. Medica immediately panics and bolts, leaving Mona confused and a little disappointed. Later in class, while Mona tries to think of a way to ease the awkward tension between them, the teacher announces cleaning assignments based on seating arrangements and pairs her with Medica. Then, while cleaning together, Mona awkwardly tries to act natural but only ends up making things more uncomfortable. Medica grows increasingly uncomfortable, and Mona immediately regrets her behavior, mentally scolding herself for making everything worse. As her frustration and embarrassment build, Mona feels close to tears, convinced she keeps ruining every interaction with Medica. Finally gathering her courage, she apologizes for making things awkward at the party, but to her surprise, Medica apologizes first for rejecting her photo request the night before. For a brief moment, the two share a quiet, sincere exchange, until Medica's loud friends burst into the room and completely ruin the atmosphere. That night, Medica looks through the group photo from the party and quietly lingers on Mona. He then receives the candid photo Subomi took earlier, briefly setting it as his lock screen before quickly changing it back out of embarrassment. Meanwhile, a mysterious new girl arrives in Japan, hinting at more chaos to come. The next morning, Mona is in bed when her oldest friend Tommo messages her to inform her that she's in Tokyo. The two quickly make arrangements to meet each other, but Mona's excitement quickly fades when Tommo says that she plans to pick her up directly from school. At school, Medaka and his friends spend time discussing what songs they should sing at karaoke later that day. Nearby, Asashi secretly listens in, and when Medaka notices her, she runs away, dropping her student ID. She then confides in Minami, who tells Asashi that she needs to step up her game so she won't lose to Mona. Just then, they overhear some classmates talk about how they wish they would be kissed brutally, and Minami bluntly tells Asashi that she should show Medaka tongue wrestling. Suddenly, Medaka enters the classroom to return the student ID card Asashi accidentally left behind, and seeing this opportunity, Minami casually asks Medaka if he has lunch plans. Medaka says he was just going to grab a sandwich, but Minami quickly volunteers that Asashi buy lunch for him, as thanks for returning the ID. Asashi quietly protests, clearly flustered, while Minami encourages her to use the chance to spend time alone with Medaka. Meanwhile, Mona is busy telling Subomi about Tommo, an old friend who's visiting that day, not knowing that, at the rooftop, Asashi is barely holding herself together with Medaka sitting beside her. She fumbles over her words, gets embarrassed, and ends up covering her face while Medaka awkwardly tries to stay composed, realizing she's having lunch with a baddie. Trying to calm herself down, Asashi blindfolds Medaka so she can look at him straight, and gets lost in a daydream about what it would be like to date him. Eventually, she gathers enough courage to suggest they play a small trick-or-treat style game over lunch. When Medaka awkwardly says he doesn't know what trick to do, Asashi surprises him with a secret peck on the cheek, and does not tell him what she just did, leaving him confused. After school, Mona meets up with Tommo, who is in the middle of luring and tempting hopeless, pathetic strangers who are looking for some quick fun. But when she sees Mona, she jumps straight into a hug and greets her. Seeing the two bombshells, the guys think it's their lucky day and that they get to take turns, but Tommo apologizes for the false advertisements and takes Mona with her, leaving those bums dry. As they settle in at a cafe, Tommo starts teasing Mona about her love life. She jokes about how popular Mona has always been with all the dudes wanting to date her and asks how things have been going since moving to Tokyo. To Tommo's surprise, Mona casually admits she still hasn't seriously dated anyone. Confused, Tommo asks how someone like Mona could still be inexperienced when she constantly has people around her, and Mona simply says that romance has never really interested her much. However, Tommo laughs and accuses her of just never having met the right person, and that comment unexpectedly makes Mona think of Medaka. The thought catches her off guard, and Tommo instantly notices the change in expression. Realizing Mona clearly has someone in mind, Tommo presses for details, but before Mona can answer, Medaka suddenly appears nearby. Without missing a beat, Tommo invites Medaka to sit with them, and she introduces herself in her bold, fox-like teasing manner, while Mona watches in growing discomfort. But there, Tommo quickly pieces together that Medaka must be the guy Mona has feelings for. Ignoring Mona's obvious panic, Tommo directly asks if Medaka is Mona's boyfriend, and Mona immediately denies it, which only makes Tommo even more amused. She keeps teasing Mona while Medaka awkwardly tries to survive the increasingly strange conversation. Eventually, after enough awkwardness for one afternoon, Medaka excuses himself and leaves, and watching Mona's reaction to his departure only confirms Tommo's suspicions. Later, at the train station, just before leaving, Tommo directly asks Mona if she likes Medaka. As expected, Mona denies it again, but Tommo laughs, clearly unconvinced, and reminds Mona she's never been good at hiding her feelings. The next day, Mona gets the shock of her life when her teacher introduces Tommo as a new transfer student. Both Mona and Medaka are visibly stunned by the announcement, and while the rest of the class eagerly welcomes the new student, Mona stares at Tommo in disbelief, clearly not expecting her visit to turn into something permanent. Meanwhile, Subomi is thrilled and immediately tries to befriend Tommo, and Tommo quickly matches her energy, joking around with the class and instantly fitting in. But her playful attitude soon causes enough chaos that Mona has to physically drag her outside for a private conversation. Outside, Mona tries explaining that her interest in Medaka is only because he's the one guy who doesn't react to her charm like everyone else. But Tommo flat out refuses to believe that explanation, and bluntly tells Mona that she clearly has the hots for him and wants his babes, to which Mona denies once again. Tommo eventually apologizes for pushing too hard, then casually starts criticizing Medaka, calling him awkward, blunt, and difficult. Mona immediately steps in to defend him, and explains that while Medaka can come off as a massive douche, he's actually dependable when it matters. Seeing that he helped her multiple times, says the right things at important moments, and is much kinder than people initially assume. As Mona continues listing all of Medaka's good qualities, she suddenly notices Tommo staring at her like she hit the jackpot, and realizing what she's just done, Mona freezes. Tommo bursts into laughter and confidently declares that Mona is completely in love with Medaka, and after all the denial and overthinking, Mona finally stops resisting the truth, quietly admitting to herself that she really has fallen for the Chad who sits next to her in class. During lunch break, Tommo proudly announces that she has decided to help bring Mona and Medaka together, and Mona immediately shuts the idea down, rejecting every suggestion Tommo comes up with. However, no matter how much Mona insists she doesn't need matchmaking, Tommo keeps teasing her nonstop about how obvious her feelings for Medaka are. Their conversation is interrupted when they run into Asashi and Minami in the hallway. There, Tommo enthusiastically pulls both girls into a massive hug and introduces introduces herself as Mona's childhood friend. Not a fan of a scissor relationship, Asashi asks Tommo to let go, but Tommo ignores her and somehow hugs her even tighter. Meanwhile, Minami manages to escape the chaos and introduces herself as Asashi's best friend properly to Mona before reminding Asashi that she wanted to talk to Mona privately. The moment she's free from Tommo's grip, Asashi quickly grabs Mona by the wrist and pulls her away before Tommo can trap her in another hug. Once they reach the rooftop, Asashi tells Mona that she wants to get straight to the point and be honest with her, and she admits that she kissed Medica the day before. The confession completely stuns Mona, as if her whole world just crumbled, and before Mona can even fully process what she just heard, Asashi hurriedly excuses herself and leaves, only to notice Tommo lurking suspiciously nearby. Tommo pretends she has no idea what just happened, but Asashi doesn't buy what she's selling. Watching Asashi walk away, Tommo quietly notes that Medica seems to attract more chicks than she initially thought, and she also suspects that kiss Asashi is referring to might not be on his lips or that Medica is actually initiating something himself. Meanwhile, Mona is still in disbelief, frustrated and upset at the thought of Asashi seemingly gaining an advantage over her, while wondering why it hurts her so bad. However, Tommo assumes this latest development will finally force Mona to confront her feelings for Medica. So Tommo comes out of her hiding place and, deciding to play her wingman, Tommo, suddenly announces that she'll host her own welcoming party to the school and invites everyone, including Medica, Asashi, and the others, to spend time together. That night, Mona takes a bath while overthinking everything. She starts spiraling at the possibility that Medica and Asashi might actually get together after the kiss. But she quickly tries to calm herself down by rationalizing that Asashi never said they were dating. To soothe herself further, Mona convinces herself that Asashi probably just kissed Medica impulsively, and that it didn't mean anything serious. Reassured by her own logic, Mona resolves to make Medica fall for her no matter what. Unfortunately, her imagination immediately betrays her by showing mental images of Medica and Asashi as a couple, sending her into another emotional spiral. The next morning, after getting zero sleep, Mona have dark circles under her eyes, surprising everyone, and she carries an unsettling grin, silently plotting and determined not to let Asashi get ahead. On the other hand, Asashi decides not to mention one important detail, that the kiss was only on Medica's cheek, and in her mind, there's no reason to clarify it when she could simply focus on making real progress instead. At the train station, Medica arrives alongside Tommo, and before Mona can decide on her next move, Asashi smoothly approaches Medica to greet him and start a casual conversation. Seeing this, Mona quickly inserts herself between them, and the two rivals exchange a look that basically screams a declaration of war. As Mona and Asashi silently compete for Medica's attention, their respective friends quietly root for them from the sidelines. Seeing the tension, Tommo announces that everyone will be heading to a famous romantic park in Tokyo as part of her welcome outing. Mona is immediately suspicious of how conveniently well this setup seems to benefit everyone, especially Minami, who is being unusually cooperative. In that moment, Minami soon suggests they all ride the roller coaster. Chaos breaks out instantly as both Mona and Asashi compete for the seat next to Medica, and neither is willing to back down, forcing Medica to reluctantly agree to ride twice. During the first ride, Mona watches with growing irritation as Asashi casually asks Medica about the safety instructions. Once seated, Asashi deliberately ignores the explanation and instead grabs Medica's hand, asking if she can hold onto him during the ride. Medica is already flustered enough from the almighty hand-holding, but things only get worse as the roller coaster slowly climbs to its highest point. Expecting Asashi to panic, Medica is surprised when she calmly reveals that she's not actually scared of rides like this, essentially telling him she simply wants to hold his hand. Watching Mona become increasingly agitated over the entire thing, Tommo tells her to relax, but Mona stubbornly denies being bothered, though nobody believes her. Once the ride ends, Minami immediately starts teasing Asashi about how enjoyable it must have been, and this only pushes Mona closer to her breaking point. Things get worse when Yuzuru jokingly points out that he saw Medica holding onto Asashi during the ride, and Medica awkwardly explains that Asashi claimed she was scared, but after reflecting on it, he realizes she didn't actually seem frightened at all. Hearing this explanation, Mona completely loses it internally, but before she can spiral further, Tommo physically shoves her toward Medica and forces her onto the second ride. Now alone with him, Mona awkwardly wonders how Asashi managed to get so close to him earlier. Trying to sound casual, she asks Medica if he enjoyed the previous ride. When he says yes, Mona silently curses herself for letting Asashi get ahead with both a kiss and hand-holding. Unable to contain her curiosity any longer, Mona directly asks Medica whether he has feelings for Asashi, and the question catches him off guard. But after a pause, he honestly says he doesn't see Asashi romantically. Relieved, Mona visibly relaxes, but encouraged by the moment. Medica works up the courage to ask Mona if there's anyone she likes. Just as Mona is about to answer, the roller coaster suddenly drops again, completely ruining the timing. After the ride, both Mona and Medica are both flustered, and their awkward energy doesn't go unnoticed, and Asashi becomes suspicious enough to check on Medica, only to get distracted by a park mascot before she can investigate further. As the group starts taking photos around the park, Tommo quietly pushes Mona toward Medica and encourages her to find a private moment with him. Mona spots an ice cream cart and drags Medica over, hoping to use it as an excuse to spend more time together. There, the vendor offers them freebies if they are a couple, and Mona pleads with Medica to play along to get the freebies. However, things take an unexpected turn when the vendor tells them he'll only give them the treats if they can prove they're a couple by kissing. Caught completely off guard, Mona freezes for a moment, then nervously grabs Medica by the face and slowly leans in toward him. But just before their lips meet, she loses her nerve and confesses that they are not a couple. Afterward, the two return to the group and share churros with everyone, but Minami immediately notices they disappeared together and accuses Mona of sneaking off alone with Medica. Not wasting any time, Minami quietly urges Asahi to make her move while the opportunity is still there, considering they're all on a theme park. Right on cue, Asahi invites Medica to various rides and eat snacks, all the while Mona watches. Seeing this, Mona retreats to the restroom to recover from the emotional damage, and Tommo tries to lift her spirits, reminding Mona how easily she used to fake interest in romance, just to fit in whenever other girls talked about crushes or relationships. Tommo points out that Mona is never satisfied because she's always trying to maintain an image people will like instead of showing her real self, and reassures her that she doesn't need to act perfect for people to care about her, but instead, she should stop running from her feelings before she ends up regretting it later. On the way home, Mona keeps replaying Tommo's words in her mind, and she gradually realizes that she's been dropping her usual polished act whenever she's around Medica. That thought sends her into a spiral as she wonders what Medica actually thinks of the more awkward, emotional, real side of her. Lost in thought, Mona suddenly notices she's wandered away from the rest of the group, and before she can react, a passing crowd accidentally knocks her phone out of her hand, sending it flying and leaving her stranded without it. Not long after, two smelly dudes like outviewers approach her and start bothering her by offering her a freaky time, while Tommo and the others are trying to contact her. After several unsuccessful attempts, the group decides to split up and search for her, and Asahi immediately tries pairing up with Medica, but Medica points out that ice cream she's carrying will slow them down, so Medica goes alone. Back with Mona, the two guys continue pestering Mona, refusing to leave her alone, and offering her something hard and sticky. But just as the situation becomes more uncomfortable, Medica suddenly appears and firmly tells them to back off. Caught off guard by his sudden arrival, Mona instinctively grabs onto him for safety, and she blurts out that Medica is her boyfriend, which is enough to make the two strangers back off and leave. Once the guys are gone, Medica awkwardly points out that Mona is still clinging to him, and Mona immediately jumps away, flustered beyond belief. Trying to regain composure, Medica makes sure that she's okay and explains that everyone split up to search for her after noticing she was missing. As Mona explains what happened to her phone, the anime gods come in clutch, and Medica gets bumped by a crowd as well, causing his own phone to fall and break. Now both stranded without phones, Mona and Medica are left with no way to contact the others, and Mona instantly starts panicking at the realization that she's now alone with Medica. Before the awkwardness can consume them, Medica suggests they walk around the park while searching for the rest of the group, and while she's nervous, Mona agrees. As they walk, Mona their fingers brush and Medica jerks away, which only makes Mona even more self-conscious. A moment later, Mona notices that Medica is staring at the Ferris wheel nearby, and she asks if he wants to ride it. Medica instantly tenses up, but refuses and tries to walk away, and watching him leave, Mona realizes how nervous he must be about being alone with her in such a romantic setting. Feeling partly responsible for how awkward everything has become, she decides to push forward anyway and asks Medica if he'd like to ride the Ferris wheel with her, adding that they might be able to spot their friends from the top, and faced with that reasonable excuse, Medica reluctantly agrees. Now seated together inside the Ferris wheel, Mona is a complete wreck, with every second feeling painfully slow, and her anxiety only worsens when she notices Medica calmly looking out the window, as if nothing unusual is happening. Her thoughts drift back to Tommo's earlier advice, and she starts recalling all the times she's let her usual perfect image slip around Medica, moments where she got annoyed, jealous, awkward, embarrassed, or honest without even thinking about it. Mona quietly admits to herself that she has always tried to present a cute, polished version of herself to everyone else. But around Medica, she constantly loses control of that image, and she can't understand why he affects her this much. Just then, Medica suddenly points something out happening below, and Mona leans over to look, but the cabin shifts, causing her to stumble directly onto him. The sudden closeness sends both of them into immediate panic, and Mona scrambles away and stumbles backward, face burning bright red. Seeing her reflection in the cabin window, Mona barely recognizes herself, and she covers her face and asks Medica not to look at her. Embarrassed and vulnerable, she insists she can't let anyone see this imperfect side of herself. To her surprise, Medica responds honestly and tells her that everyone acts strange sometimes, including her. He admits he's seen her pout, get irritated, and make all kinds of different expressions, which makes Mona feel extremely insecure, but then Medica states that those moments actually make her feel more genuine to him. Then Medica quietly adds that all of Mona's expressions make his heart race, and that single comment completely shatters Mona's emotional defenses, with her heart pounding uncontrollably as she tries to process why Medica's opinion matters this much to her. Still overwhelmed, Mona stays frozen while Medica suddenly notices the rest of their group below and turns to point them out, but Mona barely hears him. Dropping to her knees, she finally stops lying to herself and accepts the truth she's been avoiding for so long, which is that she's in love with Medica. After getting off the Ferris wheel, Medica starts guiding Mona back to the group, but quickly notices she's acting strangely quiet. He asks if she's okay, and although Mona insists she's fine, her flustered expression makes Medica suspicious. He can't help but notice she seems softer and somehow even cuter than usual, but he immediately reminds himself to stay focused and not get distracted. When they finally reunite with everyone, Subomi instantly throws herself onto Mona in relief, and Medica explains that he couldn't contact anyone because his phone broke earlier. Mona is about to relax until she notices Asahi standing nearby, and the moment their eyes meet, Mona turns bright red all over again. Asahi narrows her eyes and jokingly asks whether Mona tried anything suspicious while she was alone with Medica. Mona panics and quickly denies it, somehow becoming even redder. Completely overwhelmed, Mona suddenly announces that she's tired and wants to head home, and the others decide to wrap up the outing as well, promising to plan another hangout soon. On the train ride home, Mona quietly apologizes to Tommo for feeling like she ruined the mood, but Tommo immediately brushes that off and instead asks what's actually bothering her. Mona tries dodging the question, but Tommo reminds Mona that the whole point of organizing today's outing was to help her sort out her feelings about Medica. When Mona points out that Tommo had agreed to leave things alone before, Tommo admits she only did that because she was worried Mona wasn't being honest with herself. Finally giving in, Mona shyly reveals what happened on the Ferris wheel and how Medica noticed how differently she acts around him, and told her that her less polished, more genuine side was actually cute to him. Tommo is immediately delighted and demands more details, but Mona refuses to elaborate, fully convinced Tommo will never let her live this down. After some encouragement, Mona finally says it out loud that she's in love with Medica. Tommo bursts into laughter, which makes Mona instantly accuse her of being insufferable, but Tommo explains she's just happy to witness her best friend experiencing her first real crush. Completely unable to handle the situation, Mona buries her face in her hands while Tommo continues teasing her the entire ride home. Later that evening, Mona rushes over to catch Asahi just before she crosses the street, and Mona calls out to stop her. Concerned, Asahi asks if Mona should really be outside in her current condition, but Mona insists she has something important to say. With obvious reluctance and maximum embarrassment, Mona admits that she likes Medica romantically. Then Mona immediately starts apologizing, as if confessing her feelings is somehow an offense, but Asahi quickly stops her and tells her there's nothing to apologize for. That response catches Mona off guard, and in that moment, she gains a new level of respect for Asahi as a rival. Asahi simply smiles and continues on her way, while Mona quietly vows to never lose to her. The next morning, Mona wakes up with a fever, and she immediately complains to the anime gods about how unfair it is to get sick after finally accepting her feelings. Lying in bed, she starts spiraling over what people are actually supposed to do after realizing they're in love. And since she's always been the one being admired, she has absolutely no experience handling the opposite situation. At school, Tommo calls to check on her, and Mona explains she had to borrow her brother's tablet since her own phone is gone. During the conversation, Mona casually admits that being sick feels strangely lonely, and Tommo immediately teases her and says she only feels lonely because Medica isn't around. Mona loudly denies this, which only convinces Tommo further. Then, Tommo notices Medica nearby and casually informs Mona that she's about to hand the call over to Medica. Mona immediately starts panicking over her messy hair, pajamas, and overall bedridden appearance. Tommo ignores all of this, drags Medica aside and points the tablet at Mona mid-panic. Seeing Mona at home catches Medica completely off guard, and he tries to stay composed, but the sight of her looking unexpectedly adorable in pajamas leaves him internally malfunctioning. Mona immediately suggests ending the call out of pure embarrassment, but Medica stops her and asks how she's feeling. Before she can answer, he awkwardly mentions that she was acting strange the previous day, but then instantly realizes that was terrible phrasing. Flustered, Medica quickly backtracks and clarifies that he didn't mean strange in a bad way, and what he actually meant is that he thinks Mona is cute. Watching him panic, Mona can't help but smile, and she reassures him that she understands what he meant, though she also points out that Medica has his own awkward moments too. Feeling far more comfortable, Mona lies on her stomach and casually starts chatting with him about school and random things, and as the conversation continues, she notices herself feeling weirdly happy and giddy just from talking to him. Medica notices Mona constantly shifting around and asks if her fever is getting worse, and Mona cheerfully replies that she just feels happy, all while secretly daydreaming about how nice it would be if they actually started dating. Suddenly, Mona's mother knocks on her door, and Mona yells at her to wait, and accidentally places the tablet somewhere all man would start barking at. After a few seconds of stunned silence, he awkwardly informs Mona that her camera angle is less than ideal, and Mona completely loses her mind, scrambles to fix the tablet, and nearly dies of embarrassment on the spot. Later, Medica desperately cools himself down with cold water and tries to erase the entire incident from his memory. The following morning, Mona wakes up full of energy and spends several minutes happily imagining what life with Medica as her boyfriend would look like. By the end of her fantasy session, she reaches a bold conclusion that it's time to confess and make things official. Determined, Mona heads to school and she greets everyone brightly, thanks Tommo for her help the day before, and even acts friendly toward Asahi. Finally, Mona turns toward Medica at her desk, mentally preparing herself to start making real progress, telling herself with full confidence that she's going to make Medica fall for her. However, the moment she tries to casually greet him, Medica turns around to greet her back, and Mona starts tweaking. She accidentally knocks her eraser onto the floor, and both she and Medica reach down to pick it up at the same time, their hands brushing in the process. That tiny bit of contact is enough to completely destroy Mona's composure, and in total panic, she grabs her bag and bolts out of the classroom, still internally insisting that no matter what happens, she will make Medica her boyfriend. Comment down below, Absolute Chad, if you watch till the end. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video.